Have any multilingual people ever had funny moments when others didn't realize you could understand their language? I'm American, but I speak a little Russian. A few years ago, I was in St. Petersburg and decided to buy tickets for a boat to Peterhof. All the signs on the kiosk were in Russian, so I had no trouble checking the prices. However, I was clearly not a local, so the sly saleswoman decided to sell me tickets for 3 times the price. In response to this impudence, I looked her straight in the eye and retorted in perfect Russian. But the sign clearly says 1 ticket costs 3 times less. You should have seen her reaction. Her jaw nearly dropped. Her colleague was sitting next to me, laughing loudly. As far as I know, this is a fairly common story in Russia. Locals have one set of prices, while tourists have another. I'm walking around Italy with a German friend, and I warn him in German. Bro, you shouldn't be throwing shit at people like that. You never know who understands us here. A woman walking next to us adds, yeah, me, for example. There was a Chinese place near our campus where everyone spoke Mandarin. Even though I know Mandarin, I always spoke English with them because I'm a little self-conscious about my accent. So I usually get rice and meat there, but this time I already had some cooked rice at home, so I decided to just go for the meat. I went in, ordered without rice, and gave the money. Then I heard the cashier yelling at the kitchen staff in Mandarin. That fat ass will only have meat. No rice. I heard it very clearly and decided to add in Mandarin, that's right, I have plenty of rice at home. Since then, they always give me seconds. And by the way, they didn't charge me a penny for that order. My friend and I were trying to get home after drinking, but it was a long way and we didn't have much money. So we found 2 other women who were also going the same way and offered to share a taxi. They agreed, we called a taxi, and off we went. Then they suddenly started speaking Swedish, not knowing that my friend was half Finnish and half Swedish. I also understand Swedish, but at the time I was so drunk I didn't care. Suddenly, I got a text from my friend. They're not going to pay for the taxi. I answer, maybe we should tell the driver about this. My friend turns to the driver and says, until these 2 ladies give up half, don't let them out. He took the hint, locked all the doors, and they still had to pay. I lived in South Korea for 3 years, but barely studied any Korean. However, during that time, I met an English-speaking Korean woman who everyone considered a foreigner because she was very tall and spoke with a strong American accent, which she had acquired while studying in the US and New Zealand. When she went to finish her studies at an international university in South Korea, her teachers decided she didn't speak Korean and often insulted her in front of her. She was deeply uncomfortable with this, but she kept it under wraps and endured it for a whole year, until it was time for graduation. At graduation, she walked onto the stage in front of 800 people and delivered her speech in perfect Korean, in which she casually reminded her teachers how they called her a foreign pig. According to witnesses, one of the teachers burst into tears of shame right there on the spot. It's a pity I didn't get to see it. When I was 16 and applying for a job at McDonald's, I worked with a Spanish-speaking team, and no one suspected that I also spoke Spanish quite well. Sometimes these guys would make really rude remarks to me in Spanish, but I pretended not to understand them. This continued until a few weeks into the job, the manager approached me and told me he was valued more than me because he spoke 2 languages. To which I immediately replied in Spanish, cool, but I speak 3. The guy was completely stunned when it dawned on him that I'd been listening in on their conversations the whole time. One time, I was riding the bus and overheard 2 Swiss women sitting behind me chatting about the attractiveness of Latinos. Suddenly, one of them asked if her friend thought I was handsome. Without waiting for an answer, I turned around and said, yeah, I was wondering the same thing. It was so funny. The expressions on their faces were priceless, full of shame and confusion. But now, I have 2 new friends. Edit. They later admitted that they both found me attractive. I'm an American expat in Thailand. I have a big beard that gets a lot of attention. The locals, unaware that I understand them, sometimes like to shout at me, look, a monkey, want a banana? or some other nasty thing. I usually just ignore it because I don't want to chat with them. But there was one occasion when I couldn't stand it. In short, two young girls, about 14 years old, followed me and simply pestered me with comments about the monkey. They kept running around, yelling, annoying me. I stopped, looked straight at them, and blurted out in perfect Thai, "Monkeys don't have blue eyes. They have black eyes. Like yours." They were instantly speechless. While I was in Germany, a friend of mine who is an English teacher, she teaches in a high school, invited me to school for one of her lessons. She introduced me to the students. I said hello, said that I was from the USA, and was glad to be present at their lesson. Then my friend says, "Guys, you can ask him questions in English. What do you think Americans are like?" Some kid at the front desk decided to crack a joke in German. Fat and stupid. He meant to do it quietly, but it turned out everyone heard his rant. The teacher blushes. The students laugh. I don't know what to do and quickly switched to German. You're right, and many Americans speak German. The kid there nearly shit himself from such a surprise. At that moment, he looked like a little deer that had accidentally wandered onto the stage during a Beyoncé concert. He genuinely thought it was impossible that Americans understood German. My friends and I once went shopping at the mall. While I was stuck in the fitting room, two store employees stood nearby and started trash-talking me in Spanish. They were upset that I was taking so long to change, called me a stupid foreigner, and periodically teased me, asking in English if I needed help. The only thing they didn't know was that I was of Spanish descent. So when I came out of the fitting room and told them in perfect Spanish that no, I didn't need help, they were absolutely consumed with shame. I lived in Korea for a while. I go to get my hair cut. The hairdresser's assistant sits me down in the chair, gets me ready, and I hear her say to the hairdresser, "Holy shit, he looks like a baby." I was 22 at the time, but I really did look very young. To which I ask, "Who? Do I look like a baby?" She felt very embarrassed and suddenly ran off somewhere. But the hairdresser found out that I understood Korean, and we switched to it. I'm Brazilian, but I've spoken English since I was a child, so I can easily pass for American, as long as I don't talk too much. I once had to fly from Atlanta to Rio. At the airport, I met two very beautiful girls who spoke excellent English and were flying with their mother. As I later learned, they were American with Brazilian roots and also thought I was just an American. We chatted for a while, exchanged pleasantries, and it turned out that one of the girls had the seat next to me. Then we get on the plane, I put my luggage on the shelf, and I hear the girl's mother telling them in Portuguese, "Poor thing, he thinks I'm going to let him fly with one of you." To which I turn to her and reply, also in Portuguese, "Don't worry, ma'am, I have a girlfriend, so I'd be delighted to share this flight with you." And she sat there the whole flight without saying a word. Subscribe to the channel and like it so you don't miss my videos.